Welcome to How Was I Supposed to Know That? My name is Bernard Williams, and I'm the managing partner of Company Counsel. And this is a podcast, How Was I Supposed to Know That? That's all about the entrepreneur, and more specifically, the entrepreneur's experience. It can be a rough road sometimes, trying to be successful. And what we want people to know is that this is a journey that all of us experience as entrepreneurs. Maybe look a little bit different from person to person, but there are commonalities, and there are stories that I think are really important to share to help all of us along this journey. So with us today, I have the distinct privilege of being able to interview a real entrepreneur, and I just can't wait to hear what she has to say about her journey and about her own experiences. I'd like to welcome Emily Stein, founder of Design Librarian, to the podcast. Welcome, Emily.
Oh, thank you, Bernard. This is my first podcast. I'm excited to be here and see how it goes.
Well, I'm excited to have you here, and I hope that you'll be able to say this is your best podcast at the end of this experience, which I'm assuming that you'll be able to, since, again, this is your first
and probably podcast. Only.
Terrific. So let's jump into it. Why don't you tell us more about your business?
So I am owner of Design Librarian, which is a full-service residential interior design build firm in Philadelphia and the surrounding counties.
So that was a mouthful.
It really
so
was.
If we could unpack that a little bit. So first, if you could break down the difference between a designer and a decorator.
Sure. So the way I would define it is interior design is more technical and deals more with the infrastructure than decorating, which is merely like beautifying or embellishing the surface. So we are fully capable of doing the, in quotes, pretty stuff, but we build from the foundation up, all of the structure, layer by layer by layer, and then add the finishing details, which are often what you see that makes a room so special, but you can't start there. You have to build up.
So, and where do you come in vis-a-vis the architect? Do you come in behind the architect?
There's not always an architect involved. So we do a lot of renovations and the property is already existing and an architect isn't needed. So we do straddle a funny line when someone might consider an architect, but they don't necessarily need one, because we are kind of engineer-minded and very thorough. So we are capable of doing some of the work of an architect without actually being architects ourselves. If it was a situation where somebody was adding an extension onto the home or building from scratch, you would need an architect.
And how did you get into this line of work?
I wanted to be an architect.
So you know well the distinction between what you do and being an architect.
And if I can sidebar, I had a good friend who was a very successful architect at the time I had to make the decision. And he said, do anything else. He was as successful as one could be and was deeply miserable. So I pivoted.
Really? Mm-hmm. And it was on the basis of that advice?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yep.
So do you know what your friend does now? Is he still an architect?
He's still an architect right here in Philadelphia. A very prestigious firm to boot. I thought at the time I had to make the call that design was decorating and that it was frivolous. And I thought, that's not how I want to spend my life. I like the substance. And as I progressed, I realized that it's not one or the other, or that I have control. I can make my work more substantial than just a throw pillow, a knickknack, a temporary object.
And how do you do that? How do you make your work more substantial than it might otherwise be?
Well, we build stuff. So we renovate. Almost every project we do involves at least some renovation. And they tend to be fairly complicated. They're frequently in historic homes with a lot of challenges, some predictable, some not so predictable.
So I'd like to go back to the beginning, and I'm really intrigued by this conversation where an architect told you to don't do this, go the other way, consider interior design. So when you made the decision to follow that advice and pursue the interior design path, did you go into business right away for yourself?
No. So I worked at firm after firm after firm after firm, and landed at a firm where I was really very content. And then the owner retired. Mm-hmm. So had she not retired, I probably still would be there. because I had no reason to leave. And it was the push that I needed to say, like, the expression, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. I never would have taken the leap. But
Mhm.
because I was looking at being unemployed or finding yet another firm to join, I thought, I
Right.
know how to do all the things. I can do this. I just needed a push.
So you just used a phrase there. You knew how to do all the things. You'd been a designer for several years at that point, but had you obtained any experience managing a business or running business operations?
No, so that's an excellent point. No one teaches you in design school how to run a business.
Mhm.
So all of that has been coupled together after the fact. And I am still learning. So I did acquire a business partner who is more savvy than I am. And he has been instrumental in helping me build what I like to call a real business as opposed to a hobby job, where it has grown significantly and now feels like it's got some body to it. But I did not know anything about really the day to day operations of a business. And I still don't know enough. And I feel
Right.
like I will never know enough.
I feel the same way, quite frankly. I think it's important to have that mindset of, of, of growth and of wanting to learn more and to get better tomorrow than we were yesterday. So I think that's important. I think that's pretty healthy
Thank you.
outlook. So let's take a look back, if you will, at those maybe the first 30 days of business ownership. Um, so your former boss had retired.
hmm
You decided to take the plunge. What happened next? Walk me through the next
Oh, it was
month.
this time, like right before Christmas, 4 years ago. We had a 12-week-old puppy who needed to be housebroken. I decided that I was going to launch this business, and I got very lucky that my first ever solo client was actually a fairly juicy project where she gave me a lot of creative control. She gave me enough money to do what we needed to do, and it turned out phenomenally. And it's still some of my finest work, in my opinion, and work I'm very proud of, which I don't know that everybody says when they look back at their first project. And she's still a very good friend of mine. And we've continued to do room after room after room over the past 4 years. Incidentally, this first 30 days happened right before COVID.
Okay. Wow. Um, so you opened your business right before COVID.
Mhm. Well, it was
And
December 2019.
okay.
And
Okay.
then we were
Sure.
shut down March 2020.
Right. So you had about 4 months under your belt prior to
hmm
completely shutting down.
Yeah, totally had it.
Yeah. So you had the one client. Were you able to continue working with that client through COVID?
Mhm. Her project was actually pretty smooth sailing and successful. But my second ever client, I signed their agreement just a few days. It was either 2 or 3 days prior to the COVID shutdown. And that was one of my most complex projects I've ever taken on. I would not have chosen to take it on as a second independent project, but that's
Right.
how uh, it was fated.
So how did you actually execute the projects during COVID? I mean, I remember especially in those first few months, there was very little interaction. Everyone was quarantined. I would imagine that what you do requires being able to walk around the residence and getting a feel for the place. So how were you able to pivot?
Well, we followed the guidelines at the time, and so safety was a concern, but we did the best that any of us could do. We wore masks, we wore gloves, we social distance. A lot of my work, I don't need somebody with me, so I feel like I wasn't really endangering anybody to be in the residence, taking measurements or doing like a spot inspection to make sure progress was coming along. But it was more removed than it would be today. Today, I'm there on the job site almost all of the time. And anytime there's action happening, I am present. Whereas during COVID, that's just wasn't feasible.
Right.
And from a resourcing standpoint, so much of that is done remotely anyway, that wasn't a major hardship. But there were certain items that really I had to see in person. And that was difficult because showrooms were closed. And I felt like I was using that as an excuse. Like, oh, I'm sorry, this is delayed. I literally cannot go to the place. They are not open because COVID. And when I kept using that excuse again and again and again, though it was reality, got a little old fast.
I'm sure. Yeah, I think it did for most people around the
Yeah.
world.
Well, we
during that
didn't
time
know what
period.
it would be at the time, right? March and April, we didn't know. As months went on, we sort of figured out how to live, but like in terms of doing those jobs and how to live in general in the COVID world.
Right. So you started your business right before COVID, and you had 2 clients under your belt before the world shut down, right? In March of 19 or
20.
March of 20,
Mhm.
right? Um, so I'd imagine your first year was pretty rough from not from an operational standpoint as well as from a revenue standpoint. Is that
Yes and no. It was rough from my day to day life was difficult. So my child, I forget what grade she was in, but school age, was sent home and was doing remote learning. I had a puppy that needed to be housebroken, which sounds like a joke, but I'm trying to run a business and I'm outside with the puppy or running upstairs to try to like be IT for my teenager. And it just didn't feel like what I thought being a business owner would feel like. From a revenue standpoint, because my overhead was non existent, any money I made felt like a lot of money, even though it was just those 2 clients.
right? And did you have anybody? Were you working as a solo at that point?
So still solo at that point. I was solo until probably late summer 2020. Like as the world started to reopen, I brought on freelancers. But during the worst of it, I was also solo.
Okay, so you were still over less than a year before bringing on
Mhm. Yeah.
freelancers.
Well, I got quickly overwhelmed by the work that I do. There are infinite tiny decisions to make. And so every project that we add adds hundreds to thousands of small decisions. And those decisions need to be made by checking a lot of sources. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work that I feel needs to happen before I present to a client, this is the item, the fill in the blank. And that all costs time.
Right.
And so there were tasks that I could then hand over to a freelancer that they could do in their spare time or remotely. It didn't need to be present during COVID times. They could do research on their computer
Right.
and send me the results.
Okay. So during summer of your first year, you decided to, well, you're ready to scale, you're ready to grow. I guess you were getting clients, right? You were more than just those original first 2.
Well, so the first COVID didn't help speed things up
Mhm.
in reality. So the first 2 clients were still in progress by summer, but we had added more clients.
Mhm.
So what should take 6 months took 9 months or a year because of delays. Everybody's heard like supply chain issues, but that's or was reality. The city of Philly was shut down for a time. We couldn't get out. And then there was also like the possibility or consequence of getting sick. And then that would delay someone. So everything took longer than maybe it would if it was happening right now, today.
Sure.
So we didn't have like a massive roster of clients, but each job equals much more work than maybe you would think on the surface.
Okay. And when you first started to outsource, were these independent contractors or were they employees that you were hiring?
So they're independent contractors, and I made a mistake, which I don't know exactly what I did wrong and how not to duplicate it, but I put up a job post saying that the freelancer could be from anywhere because truly it didn't need to be anywhere in the Philadelphia region. And I didn't apply enough parameters, and I got several thousand applicants that then I had to pay for because you pay for all of the relevant
You
applicants.
paid per applicant.
Mhm. And then sort through them all. So I got down to like a short list of very interesting candidates. And I think we ended up with 3 freelancers. And then that was a revolving cast. So one would leave, I'd add another. 3 became 2, 2 became 3 again, and so on.
Mhm. And did you continue to use the same service that brought you candidates at a fee per candidate?
I figured out how to suspend the applicant so that I didn't have to keep paying.
Okay. And then how did you find candidates after that?
I didn't need to because I had several thousand.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I
you
just go back through
went back to
the.
the same well.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So at one time we had a freelancer, I think, based in Los Angeles, and now she lives in Paris. And that was cool. I thought that made me seem like bigger than I was at the time. Like, oh, we're bi-coastal. I have an employee who lives in Paris or in Los Angeles. Um, but freelance work can happen from anywhere, so it wasn't that fancy.
Right. But I imagine some kind of connection to LA or Paris.
But yeah,
It carries some
felt that.
cachet in your.
So she left me. She might have been my first or second. She was with me for a long time, and then she came to me virtually because she did not live on the East Coast, kind of regretfully, and said, "I have this opportunity to go to Paris." She had many streams of income, which I think is typical today. And one of them was fashion design, and she had an opportunity to show in Paris. I'm like, girl, if I was you, I would quit this right now too. I'd go to Paris.
Mhm.
And I think she's still there, and she's doing quite well according to Instagram.
That's great. So did you ever hire any actual employees?
I did. Well, so first I found a business partner.
Okay.
So I met a leather and vinyl repair person who came over to estimate the damage that that puppy did to my leather sofa and decided it wasn't worth trying to repair. And I told him, like, oh, I didn't spend that much on the sofa. I buy a lot of secondhand furniture pieces that would be quite valuable, except for I don't pay the retail price. I pay a greatly reduced price for good stuff. So I was saying, it is an expensive sofa, or at least it should be, but I didn't actually spend that. So I can afford to fix it. And ultimately, we did not do anything, but I was so engaged and intrigued by this person. He was like very smart. We had a phenomenal conversation. And I remember my daughter walked in from school, opened the door, saw this strange man sitting in a chair, like did a double take and walked upstairs and said nothing. And that is my business partner.
So how did that? So you had a great conversation.
Mhm.
You were impressed with them professionally. You had some kind of a connection there. How did it go from that great conversation with I guess essentially a vendor, to a discussion about becoming a partner in your
Well,
business?
a couple different ways. So I had signed a couple more agreements with clients. So I was growing and adding business. And I had this one client for, at that point, maybe 7 months or 9 months, that was sent an agreement by me with a payment schedule. And didn't pay and didn't pay and didn't pay and didn't pay. And our deadline was approaching because there was a very hard deadline on this project. And I thought, you knew you had to pay me, and it's pretty clear what the expectation is, and you agreed to it, but yet I couldn't get him to pay. And so I was friendly, but not in business with my business partner. And he must have said something like, "How's your business?" And I must have said, "Terrible, this guy won't pay me." And he said, "Well, did you say this? Did you say that? Try this." And he ended up ghostwriting texts. It was a Saturday morning. He was texting me as if I wrote the text, but through his filter, which is unfiltered. And I would copy and I would send it to the guy. And by the end of that morning, the guy was like, okay, I'll pay. And he paid me. So what I couldn't get done in 7 months, this guy got done in his pajamas in 10 minutes.
It's impressive.
So then, and I think I'm probably describing a forceful personality, which he is. He started to say to me, I should be your business partner. And I'm like, I don't want one. No, I should be your business partner. I don't need one. No, I'm going to be your business partner. No, if I want one, if I need one, who's to say it would be you? And as you might be gathering, I do a lot of research. Like, I would not just take the first offer. I will go out and I will interview others. Because I started to say, like, all right, maybe I would benefit from a business partner, but maybe it's not you. And so I interviewed a few people, and then I came back and I said, you know what, like, damn it, it's that guy. It's the first guy. And my business and the trajectory of my life is forever changed, and I think in a positive way.
So it was his idea to approach you about the potential partnership.
Oh, sure. And I don't think he knew what he was offering at the time. It was just like throwing spaghetti at the wall, like, well, let's see what she says. And so when I finally said yes, I was like, oh, no, there's no handshake deals here. So we drafted our partnership documents. Like it's very complex, this arrangement that we have for the indefinite future. Because I'm not a like casual, easygoing kind of gal.
So how long has it been with this partner?
Oof. Legally, under a year. I think we signed our partnership agreements like January 2023, or maybe it was December 22. It's right around a year.
Okay. And are things working out the way that you expected?
I don't know that I had expectations. He had expectations, which I thought were grandiose. And actually, I'll tell you, I remember he said something like, I'm going to grow this into $1 million business. And I'm like, the hell you are. And we're on track to write $1 million this year, which is nuts. Like that, I could never have imagined that. And so he was right. And I hate to say that, but I'll give him his flowers.
In less than a year.
In less than a year. Yeah.
Do you mind me asking what your revenue was last year?
Oh, it was a joke. It was a joke compared to this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know it off the top of my head, but it might have been like 100, 150. Might not have even been that. So this is
at least about a 10x.
Substantial jump.
This is about a 10x jump in 1 year. What do you attribute that to? I understand that he's forceful, but it's got to be more than that, right?
He polices me. And that's really his job, is to be my backbone, because I find every case exceptional. Everyone deserves a favor. It's just this one time. Oh, it's not that big a deal. Sure, I'll discount. That's my nature. And that's not how you run a business. And he has to police me so that I'm not giving away the farm, because otherwise I would.
So it sounds like it's part discipline, part structure.
What's funny is I consider myself a very structured and very disciplined person. But when it comes to like dynamics with a client, I think I'm very eager to make them love me, like me, want me. And so I comply. You want a free everything? No problem. Well, yes, problem. You can't do that and call it a business. And so he has trained me to be more disciplined in that way. Like I am a very self-motivated person, so I don't need discipline to get up and work or to complete a task, but I'm not disciplined in the not just doing favors because somebody asked you to.
So the premise of this podcast is that entrepreneurs sometimes have a rough time of it, and even successful entrepreneurs like yourself sometimes go through experiences that are difficult, that challenge us, or that they just leave us exhausted and wondering what happened. And I like to have a forum like this to be able to talk about it, because I think we can all learn from each other's experiences. What comes to mind when I say that? I mean, are there any experiences that you've been through that you'd like to share with us?
Well, Bernard, it's funny you should ask, because to no one's surprise, I brought notes. What my first business failure was actually a venture that predates Design Librarian. I launched a nonprofit 17 years ago or thereabouts, and it was an utter failure. So no one wanted what I was offering. I was incredibly earnest and tried very, very, very hard, and thought that therefore this would take off. And there was early interest from some outside agencies where a lot of people thought, oh, this is a good idea, or at least told me it was a good idea. And then when I took it to market, so to speak, it wasn't. It fell flat on its face and hard. And I was devastated because I had invested so much of myself into this endeavor, and it wasn't vaguely successful. I had a teen entrepreneurship program, and we were giving microloans to teenagers to develop small businesses. That was the idea.
Sounds like a nice idea.
Sounds like a nice idea. It's been done since and been done successfully, but not when I did it. So I showed up to this population that was told why they were going to be there. Group of kids, I forget, like 8 to 16 maybe, why they were going to be there. and I like sharpened 50 number 2 pencils, like so excited for this first day to launch my pilot. And the kids could not have wanted to be there any less. And I came to find out they showed up because there was air conditioning. I'd driven like 2 hours to be there with my sharpened pencils and all this positive energy. And I was just so rejected.
Yeah, it must have felt terrible.
Oh, it was awful. Yeah.
So what did you do?
What I do? I closed up shop, and I don't think it was immediate after, but I realized that no matter how earnest I am or somebody is, does not guarantee success. And I hear this. In fact, I encountered this earlier this week where I was declined from a job. But why? Like, you're so nice. Well, nice doesn't matter. Just simply, like, no offense to me or to anybody, but it's not relevant here. And there are rules and expectations. And if you don't meet them or you don't satisfy them, you should not win. And I think with younger folks than myself, that's somehow a foreign concept. But nice doesn't always matter. And trying hard doesn't equal a win.
But you still have to try hard, don't you?
Well, I
Or
do. Oh, I do. No, I try. It's in my nature. So I can't not. I have to try. But I am aware that even if I try my hardest, that doesn't mean that it is good enough.
And that was an experience that you, I guess, a lesson that you learned from starting a nonprofit that you had high hopes for, and it didn't quite go the way that you wanted. Has that experience borne out at all in your for-profit business?
Like, has it tarnished my viewpoint?
I mean, has it borne out in any way? I mean, have there been times when you've thought about giving up and you decided not to, or?
I let myself give up like for an hour at a time on occasion. So there are definitely times in current days where I give up. I've had enough. I can't do this. I hate this. But that lasts for an hour. And I know it's going to last for an hour or an evening or one weekend. But I always get back into it. And I think the reality is that whether this was my paid work or not, it is what drives me. So I might as well get paid to do it. So I'd be tinkering and designing and making no matter whether you gave me money or not.
So when you're in those rough patches and when you quit for an hour, what do you do during that hour?
Oh, sulk. Then I stomp around the house. I'm cranky. I don't respond to my text messages, and then I'm better.
Just like that?
Yep, just like that.
Is there any technique?
No, I'm teasing. No, I mean, sometimes you feel like a loser. And I'd be lying to say, even when you say I'm running a successful business, what does that mean? I don't think it's ever going to feel like it's a successful business. And I've long been aware that there's no number that I can attain that will equal success. Like, that line will always move. I always second guess myself. I always could have worked harder. I always could have done better. And I push and I push and I push. And then sometimes either I worked really hard and it didn't go the way I wanted, or I worked really hard and I broke down. Like, I pushed too far past the line and I could not keep going.
So when you look at your business, we're coming up on the end of 2023. When you look at your business in 2024, and maybe even for the next couple of years beyond that, what is your vision for the business? What does the future look like?
I think so now that we are a we and not a me, it's easier for me to make wise decisions and healthy decisions because I look at it, and it's going to sound really trite, but like a family where I have to make decisions for the best for the most of us, not just for me. And it influences the direction that we take. Do we decline a job or do we take a job on? If we're iffy on it for whatever reason, maybe it's a no, and that's okay. There will be another job. If it's going to be damaging to somebody in the company, because I do have dependence. Also means sometimes the opposite of if I don't want a job for whatever reason, we have dependence and I need to work. Because if I don't work, we don't make money and I can't feed these families. So it's my family and sometimes 3 or 4 other families that I consider are my responsibility to help take care of.
So do you have any exciting projects coming up in the first quarter that you're looking forward to?
Well, yes, maybe. So earlier today, I had a conversation. I'm going to shoot a couple pilot episodes of the TV show.
That is very exciting.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you tell us any more?
No.
Oh, man.
Did you bring an NDA with you?
That's what they call a teaser in the business.
That's right.
Well, that's very exciting. I'll have to be on the
Thank
lookout
you.
for that. I hope you tell me
Stay
when that
tuned.
comes out. That's great. So, so other than staying tuned to the local television stations, how can people find out more information about Design Librarian and what you have going on, and how do they stay in touch?
We have a website, which is thedesignlibrarian.com. We're on Instagram at Design Librarian. We're on Facebook at Design Librarian, LinkedIn, and we have a YouTube channel.
That's great. It looks like you've got all the bases covered. Is there anything else you'd like to say to an audience of fellow entrepreneurs who are trying to figure this out?
None of us know what we're doing.
Yeah, well said. Done. Period. Emily, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This has been another episode of How Was I Supposed to Know That? Thanks so much.